This is Sean Taylor for Blues in Britain as part of the How Musicians Work series, in which I get to talk to great artists about the craft that they create, the magic that they create, which enriches the world. Don't forget to like and subscribe because you can find out the next interviews with different great artists. Today, I'm joined by an unbelievable artist, someone who brings together so many different styles, a great singer, a great songwriter, a great musician, a social activist who has an incredible album out, Grandfather Courage, which is absolutely brilliant. And I'm delighted to welcome Fantastic Negrito. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you so much, Sean, for having me in such kind and flattering words. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's really great. The album is just great. I absolutely love it, and I'd love to just go straight in and ask about the story, um,
Yes.
the the great story of your seventh generation grandparents. Could you tell us about that?
Well, it's pretty unbelievable just because of the context of its time. It was during the pandemic when a lot of artists, we were not touring. We had a lot of time on our hands. So I happened to stumble across some ancestry.com links, which told some fascinating stories that ended up being facts about my origin and my seventh generation grandparents. I found a court document, I guess a probate paper that says my seventh generation grandmother, Elizabeth Gallimore, was a Scottish indentured servant, formed a forbidden relationship with my enslaved grandfather on a tobacco plantation in Virginia. And I've never heard another story like that. I've heard of the opposite, where there's been a white man, they owned everything, so they could have whoever they want, and they'd father children, but never a white woman freely choosing to, love a black enslaved man in 1759. For me, it was the most punk rock shit I'd ever heard, and it became extremely inspiring to me, and it really answered a lot of questions as to who I was and why I always felt like going against the grain and questioning everything. And yeah.
It's an incredible story. I mean, the minute that you read that story, did you find yourself just writing straight away about that?
No, absolutely not. You can't, because there's a lot of shock and there's a lot of, I have to I think I may have read it 100 times because it didn't seem believable. And then I contacted people and scholars and historians, like, how could this be? And I think I found the line because on my mother's maiden side, there were registered free Negroes, they were called. And there was a bunch of them. And I was like, how does he become free in the South during the time of slavery? How are you? But apparently there was quite a bit of registered free Negroes at the time. So it was just quite a bit of a shock. And there were other things that I discovered. One was my surname was completely made up. My father had another family to tell us about. I mean, it goes deep, man. It's so many things were discovered during this weekend in Atlanta as I was working on a TV show. I was isolated in a room due to the pandemic, and everybody was quarantined, so I was just on the computer. And my life changed that fateful day.
It's an incredible story, man. It's very, very
It's
special.
very incredible.
And could you talk a little bit about how the Grandfather Courage record goes relates to the White Jesus Black Problems album? Could we talk about that a little bit? Just about how the relationship between those.
You know, absolutely. And the interesting thing about Why Jesus Black Problems, I got that name just boom, hit me like a lightning bolt when I found out that my last name was made up. And I thought, why would someone, born around the turn of the century? My dad was born in 1905. He had me when he was 63 and my mother was 30. And I thought, why would a black man, intelligent, progressive, create that name? He created it. His name with all these consonants in it. And then immediately that's when the title came. And I think it had something to do with taking the pressure off himself and making people look at his name always.
And
And I
with the,
thought,
sorry, please carry on.
yeah, I just thought that's how it came about, and how the albums relate is, it's, artists, we want to be inspired. And this story inspired a film, a full album. And then Grandfather Courage was the same album recorded with no electronics in a big room with just 4 guys playing. And that I needed to do it. I've never had a topic, or I've never had an album which I worked so hard to do so much on, because I felt like the story was just so compelling and so interesting, and again, very inspiring.
It is just an amazing album. I mean, it's interesting listening to that the Grandfather Courage and the White Jesus Black Problems back to back. It was a fascinating, because correct me if I'm wrong, you've never done. It's interesting. It's really interesting. Because I was curious though, but correct me if I'm wrong. You added Lockdown. That's an added song, right, to the Grandfather Courage record?
Well,
no.
As Venomous Dogma is a combination between Drifting Away and Lockdown. I just thought,
okay.
One great thing about being a middle-aged guy out here in Oakland, like, nobody really cares what I'm doing anyway. That's how I started this thing. I was like, you know what? I'm a middle-aged guy. No one really cares anyway. What am I afraid of? And I love just being as creative as I can, taking as many risks as I can, and making the process as uncomfortable as I can make it. Because if I wanted to be comfortable, I would have worked at Starbucks, But the idea to make it as uncomfortable as I can. And so you like combining songs and just, being experimental and pushing the boundaries as far as I can.
And you talked a little bit about the way it was recorded. You said 4 guys in a room. Could you tell us a little bit about where and how that happened?
Yeah, at my studio where I record, but this time we just spaced the mics out, crammed everybody into the control room. Really, we're like, okay, let's record this. And I just wanted to, I kind of reimagined. Like I had this fantasy of being this college student who, although, he had seen Fantastic Negrito's Tiny Desk and all that stuff, and he liked him, but he really was like, why doesn't this guy record his stuff more like the Tiny Desk style, like more stripped down, naked and raw? And so I had fun pretending to be that college kid when I was producing the record, and just trying to make some of the songs unrecognizable as I could. And I thought, and that was kind of the objective. And again, I guess it's just fun. And I think we gotta not we have to, but I really enjoy getting back in touch with the 17-year-old in me who just wanted to have fun and create music, but I guess now doing it the wisdom of a grandfather. So it's a quite a fascinating journey, sonically and psychologically too.
I was curious about. I mean, it is just one of these albums. It kind of surprises you. I love that thing. Listening to it, you think it's going one way, and then it pulls you another way. And there's a couple of songs I'd love to ask you about. First of all, Nibberdip, which I hope I said wrong. I said right, Nibberdip. And there's a great moment. I've made a note of this at 3 minutes 10, when you get the line, "Don't ever try to sell me." And the song, it's kind of a bridge, isn't it? Middle 8, you kind of do there at that moment. But it's this great shift in your music when you think you're going one way and then it just pulls you the other way. Could you talk about how you do that with songwriting?
Well, I think, I wish I was this clever technician, which I'm not, and I think I'm a very kind of raw type of individual, and everything is really pretty organic that happens in the studio. It's never really calculated, and that's why all my albums sound different. And I can drive engineers quite crazy with these shifts. and the people that are trying to sell my music. I think I'm what somebody called me a marketing nightmare, but I don't think. I just want to really be in touch with telling the story and being as fearless as I can be, and that's what I try to stay in touch with. Whatever it feels like it fits. That's what's got to happen, no matter what. And I'm telling you, there's such a redemptive quality about creating like that, because I spent so many years as a 20-year-old on a major label trying to ask permission, knocking on the door, trying to get in. And as I became a middle-aged guy, I stopped asking this permission. And I think a lot of the process in the studio is like, how don't want to how uncomfortable are we? And okay, this is great. We're uncomfortable. How unsure are we? Then, all right, I think we're on to something. So I wish I was kind of this brilliant technician, but I'm not.
It's so great though. It's so great. It just pulled me. I was going one way, and I was just like, "Oh!" And the lyric at that moment, it just lifts everything. It's just so clever that I just wondered how you got to that point in the song. I don't know if you remember that exact moment.
By the key word that belongs in every art form in the world, man. Just being inspired, inspired to tell my 7th-generation grandparents' stories. I mean, it's a global story. In a way, it's kind of like a really fucked up Romeo and Juliet, in a sense, taboo love that actually becomes extremely powerful and actually unites opposites, two ends of the spectrum coming together in the name of power, the name of love, the name of possibility, the name of courage, the name of defiance. I mean, I think like, wow, this is what like my life has been. And I wondered why my life has been like that sometimes. Like I could have taken easy roads even in my 20s and just being formulaic and be successful. And I don't know, I feel that I feel the power of them, I guess. And I always have, but I just didn't know why.
And what does the word Nibbidip mean? Is that a place, or what does that mean?
I'm a Black American. Don't you know about our vernacular?
I just want to know. I'm sorry, I'm a white guy.
Listen, like we be making shit up. I mean, think about just African American names. I mean, a lot of them we just create them. I'm sure it comes from something.
Yeah.
But like all the the slang and all comes from the Black communities. It obviously comes from something. I'm not like a sociologist or anything, but I believe that I just flipped that word and I felt like that's the word.
So you invented a word. Cool.
But it meant, it's not the first time on records I've done it, but what it meant to me is like this embodied the story, this quirky story of this, like, who is this white Scottish chick? Like, what is she thinking? Like, you know what I mean? My grandmother, it's like, lady, you're blowing it. Like, you could have a good life. Why are you? And then who is this Black enslaved gentleman? Like, you want to get hung from a tree, sir? I mean, what? You can't get a white woman pregnant in the 1750s. You can't. Not if you're Black, but they did. And again, I just thought about, wow, this is the epitome of like what a rebel is. And this is, like I say, the most punk rock shit ever. This is like so defiant and beautiful.
I love the lyric on that song. I'm in love with a woman, freedom in her eyes. That is so beautiful.
Yeah, I felt like try to imagine when I was writing that song, like let's tell their story. And she's a woman, he's a man. These other constructs that people have erected, these walls. It's just bullshit. It's not, none of it's real. It's all a construct. And we're human beings, man. You're not just some white guy. I'm not just some Black guy in Oakland. We're just two people talking. Society has filled in the blanks. Okay, you're this white guy in a hat, and I'm this black guy in a hat, and you go there. It's all complete rubbish. But we seem to be fascinated with it as a society. It seems I don't know why. Or maybe I do know why. It's a good business. I don't know.
It's a great song. That's what pulls me in. I always great songs are the thing that move me, and it is a great song. So that is
I appreciate it.
great song.
It was very it's kind of a spiritual awakening and very revealing, you know, to come across the story and make this film and write these albums. It changed my life, literally.
And there's another song on the record. The highest bidder is. Oh man, that's a great. That's just so exciting and so strong, and everything goes to the highest bidder, which is true now as it was then. And that, could you tell us
Absolutely.
about how you wrote that song, and you remember where you were when you wrote it? I always ask people that. I want to know.
I feel the song was like it's like there's a saying, I think it was actually a record a long time ago where the gods of Africa meet the ghosts of Mississippi. And that's what that song was to me. I remember that inspired me. I think I was talking to Taj Mahal, and he mentioned that to me, and I looked it up, and it was a record where the gods of Africa met the ghosts of Mississippi, and I was like, wow, how do I get that into a song sonically? So I was, you know, in my place of creativity, which is my little hole in the wall studio on 32nd and San Pablo in West Oakland. And I was just pondering on that concept sonically, like where do they meet?
It's, I mean, just great, and I love the piano and the acoustic guitar and the way it go in and out, interplay between that. You talked a little bit about recording. Was quite a bit of it live? You said the way it was recorded, or
It was all the way live. I mean, I think he might have came back in just to play some guitar overdubs and some cello and vocals, but it was all like upright bass, and my job was to direct them differently. Do not play the song the way that I recorded it originally. But yeah, it was, you know, no drumsticks, all brushes, you know.
And what was the
All
point?
acoustic.
Sorry, please carry on. Sorry.
Not all acoustic, no frills.
No, it sounds so great. And what was the moment when you decided to revisit the White Jesus Black Problems album? What was the moment where you decided to go back on and do the acoustic thing? Was there something that triggered that?
I don't know. This whole project, I described it feels like a train that was going 100 miles an hour. And I just stayed on the train, and I don't know. It's slowing down now, I guess, but I've just been riding this train, and the train goes where it goes, and I just follow it. So I don't think there was a moment. I just knew that train that I was on, that next stop was Grandfather Courage.
It's a great train ride, and it's a great stop for sure. We'll ask a little bit about you. You better have a gun. You better have a gun. Living in the land of God, red, white, and blue streaks pouring out from the sun. That's great. Could you tell me about that song? How that came to be?
I mean, I think, you know, a lot of ways. I think it just emotionally, you know, in the current state of our country and how we're just inundated and saturated with the gun industry wreaking havoc upon our country. Children are murdered in schools, no laws get changed. And I just thought about, you know, America and guns. And I thought, well, America started with guns, you know. You know, people came and they had guns, and the native people here didn't have guns. And so guns ruled, and you had your gun and you had your Bible, and they went, boom, let's go. Let's go make a country. You know, give us the land and we'll give you the Bible. I just thought of that concept of even my white Scottish grandmother, like she had to work as an indentured servant, which is absurd. But, you know, the power of the gun forced that upon her, a white woman. And of course, my Black enslaved grandfather, I just kept thinking of the country and the origin of the country. And how still to this day we're being controlled by this gun, even to the point where our children are murdered in schools and we won't budge an inch because of this love of guns and God. This kind of interesting combination. So I feel like I can't tell this story, this American story, which involves race, without guns. So it seemed very extremely natural to me to include that song.
It's a great song and it's so powerful. And I'm glad you mentioned America now and the the way guns are, because as an English guy, it's quite alien. I mean, but I was really curious though, because as someone who has followed American music culture my whole life, the land of great writers, of great artists, of great poets, of great songwriters, of great this and great that. How could you have all this greatness and then how does Donald Trump happen? Sorry, I'd love to know. Just my curiosity, because how could you get a monster like that and have all this greatness?
I think that's easy. That's really easy. And I think all greatness and great art comes from suffering. That's where it usually comes from. It comes from hardships. African Americans on their journey didn't create this music by, sitting at a resort, or on a vacation. There's a lot of, tears, and how much are those tears worth? Is really the question. I mean, there's a lot of blood, and what's that value of that blood? And, the music is meaningless without the emotional experience. Without the emotional experience, man, they're just notes. That's all they are. It's just a G major. But if you put the emotion behind that and the experience behind that G major, it becomes G major. It becomes something else. So I think it's part of our journey as an empire, that we go through this stupidity and ignorance. I don't think that it's unique to the, Americans. I think the Romans, you read some of their history, completely stupid. The English, the Ottomans, I mean, everybody, I think with power, this great power and this kind of belligerent power of being so powerful comes a lot of arrogance and stupidity. It comes hand in hand. So we have our work cut out for us, for sure.
I'm glad you mentioned the English. We have made a lot of mistakes. I can't deny that we have made a lot of mistakes. But we made some.
It goes with it. I don't think anyone becomes that powerful.
Yeah.
Of a country, a nation, an empire without, a lot of stupidity comes with that. And I think America, we're experiencing ours.
And how do you, sorry,
say thing, but.
And I was curious about, like, because your songs are, how do you define, like, writing a political song? Because you got the responsibility of talking about the political message, but at the same time keeping it artistic. How do you go about that process?
Well, I just don't have a process, and I don't ever try to write a political song, and I don't ever try to write a love song. I don't ever try to write any song. I think that there's something very powerful about songs and music and messages, is that they just come. I don't know, like I never thought of myself as I'm gonna write political songs. I never think of my songs as political. People label them that, and I'm okay with that. But I think I'm just an old guy at the train station saying, look, hey, you guys, look over there. I've been on this planet over 50 years, and I'm telling you what I'm looking at. That may not end well for you, because I've been in this movie before, and I've seen this movie. I feel more like that guy. Like, hey, look over there. Here's the story. I'm going to tell you this story. I don't know if I'm even imparting my opinions on any of this. I'm just kind of telling you what happened. When I wrote The Last Days of Oakland, that was the last days of Oakland. I'm telling you guys what's happening. It's like, I'm not trying to write anything. People are living on the streets in Oakland. People who were born here won't be able to live here anymore. That's it. On this story, I'm telling you, my 7th-generation grandparents were, crazy. They fell in love. They started having children. I'm their 7th-generation grandson. It's just a fact. She was white. He was black. It's on a cotton plantation. I don't know how much of my opinion is in any of this stuff. And I think to be political, it's like this great opinion. And I stand for this. I don't know. It feels odd to me. I mean, I'm being honest. I don't make any efforts to, I'm going to do this. Everything goes to the highest bidder. Let me think about that. I think it's just, ooh, wow, there it is. Everything. How did this story start? Wow, we're so distracted. Wow. Race and color and you're this and wait a minute. It's the money. People enslave people because they wanted to make a lot of money. And maybe they just use race as like, here's a distraction. Your race, it's right here. Keep looking at it. Why rob you blind? So I think much of my songs they come to me and they're just, I feel like I'm just, they'll say like the United Nations is coming to a country to observe the voting. So nothing, I feel like one of those people. I'm just kind of observing what's happening. And it's always my intention. I've never like waved any political flag that I am aware of. Here, I just don't. I feel like the slogans are quite useless. And I think when we get so entrenched in ideology, whether it's left or right, they often end up meeting each other. They often go so far to the left, so far to the right, so far to the hello. But gee, aren't we friends? So yeah, that's my long answer on that. I just want to be as transparent as I can on that.
That's a good answer, and it does lead me into the thing that I was going to ask you next, which is this is a series of interviews with great artists like yourself, in which I started them because I'm a musician and I want to know how great artists work, even if they tell me like what you just said that you don't have a process. I'm fascinated by the journey the artists go on from an idea becoming a song to becoming an album to becoming a live track to becoming that trip that never ends for an artist. And I find it fascinating that this is, I think, the 5th, 6th
God,
interview. I love it. I love
I'm,
that, finding that out, man.
I'm always. I knew you were a musician too. I was like, this guy's definitely.
It's a
I didn't
hat,
look
man.
you up. No, like I know I'm talking to musicians, but I'm like in some ways, this is a lot of suffering in this, and it's like you want it to end too at some point. I don't know. I kind of feel. I mean, I quit for 5 years. That's how I became Fantastic Negrito. I literally quit, sold
Wow.
all my and became a marijuana farmer. That's how I got here.
Wow.
In the
That's
process,
sad, man.
some
I find that really
yeah, I
sad because I
quit.
just love the songs. I just find that sad. But hey.
Well, no, I mean, okay. I think it's all right. I think it's at least for me. I don't know. I never thought of myself as much of a musician. Anyway, I thought of myself as more of a kind of reluctant instrumentalist. I don't have the same joy that I think other people have in playing instruments at all. But I do have a joy in like this. We'll talk about the process. Oh my God, I have this instrument, this piano, this guitar, this bass. And I can make this picture with this. If I let me just get through these notes. Yeah, I don't feel like I have that same commitment. Like people like, what are you playing, man? I always feel pressure like, oh shit, what am I playing? I think it's it's looks like a Les Paul gold top hollow body. It's
Okay.
like I don't have that. I don't have that commitment to instruments at all. I find musicians boring. It's like I don't. It's okay too. I think it's because I think it's okay. Like we're all. It should be different for all of us. We're on
Yeah.
different journeys. A lot of my storytelling and music came from trauma. It came from. I was the 8th of 14 kids. Growing up feeling like an outsider, an outcast, and a lot of it came from that.
Yeah, I mean that's good to know. And I mean, although you say you're not a musician, you're definitely a brilliant songwriter and a brilliant storyteller. And that is for me what that the stuff you talked about today, I find fascinating. The way you found those things. And correct me if I'm wrong. There was a word you used earlier about being uncomfortable. I think that was the word you
Yeah,
used when you were writing. So could you explain about that and what you meant by that? I was just intrigued.
well, I don't know. I feel like that's my favorite when I'm kind of unsure and like embarrassed or thinking that people may not be comfortable. And I'm thinking what I'm doing, I feel like that's when I'm on to something. That's probably who I am at my core, kind of irreverent. I don't know. Yeah. Like my grandparents. And I do feel like that's when the best stuff happens. I think artists that I've loved, there was always something uncomfortable about them. And I'd rather enjoy that part of being an artist. I feel like discomfort promotes growth. I like to grow. And yeah, that's my favorite time. If I'm comfortable, I'm like, oh my God, is this boring? What am I saying here? Am I saying something? Yeah, I don't just want to, I think I do respect music so much in the art form that I never want to be disingenuous. I just go through the motion. And I think when I quit, I felt like I'm not feeling any of this. I'm going through the motion. I'm like, I quit. 5 years I quit. So
Wow.
I think I respect it that much. I'd rather quit.
We talk about influences. Could you because this is blues in Britain. Well, I have to ask when you can you remember when you first heard the blues and who it was and what can you remember?
Well, I spent summers in rural Southern Virginia. But I think I definitely had heard it before then. And I think immediately I was like, whoa, what's this? Really, the first record that I heard was not even blues. It was called St. Louis Blues by Louis Armstrong.
Right.
I think I was 5 years old. My dad was listening to it. And I was like, whoa, like, what is this? And I like, that's Louis Armstrong. But I think I heard like the country blues, that what really inspires me quite a bit with my grandmother's brother who has one arm. He lost his arm in a sawmill. And they used to call him Horse Brown, Horse, H-O-H-R-S-E. And I wanted that to be the name of my persona, but I chose Fantastic Negrito, or it chose me. And I think, he was listening to that. And I really didn't like it. I was like, there's no drums. I don't get it. Because I'd heard blues, but it was, always more produced. There's something about it was so strange and eerie. I didn't like it at all. And I think I came back to it later, but I think the first people I was hearing, were like Robert Johnson, and you just hear him with the guitar and it's like, you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
Kind of that feeling. But I think like full band blues, I was hearing Muddy Waters. And I thought that stuff, oh, that's cool. But it took me a long time to get there. I think, what my feeling is that I had to live, man. I had to fail. I had to bury my brother. I had to suffer. And then one day it just all made sense to me. But I thought also, to me, like when I was growing up hearing the first rap records, like to me, one of the greatest blues records is the Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five.
Yeah.
Man, that's blues, man. I mean, how much 12-bar blues can you do? It's like it's boring as shit after a while. Like I don't like blues music. I like great art form. You know what I mean? I just think blues is like a feeling, and it's like you're telling the story and you got to tell it, and you're telling it to survive. And when artists are pulling that off, and when they're not. So yeah, I don't know if I heard it was at first listen. I think it was I was so I was attracted to things that were weird. I loved the punk music. I loved classic rock. I remember all that stuff. That Zeppelin, I remember I heard that for the first time. I was like, what these white people do to the blues? You know, this moment I was sneaking around and I saw this record and it said this weird word, Led Zeppelin. I was in this area where I wasn't supposed to be. I was always in like a reform school or something. And I remember to the class, I just put the needle on it. I was like, wow, this is fucking out there. Yeah. So there's different times. And I thought the blues was my uncle. And I couldn't understand a word he was saying. And he had a deer hanging from the tree, and it was on the dirt roads in rural Southern Virginia. And I think he was playing Muddy Waters. Yeah. And I never forget that, man. This black man, black as night, had the deer hanging from the tree. There's only one store in the whole town, and the man is just talking to us. And I told my grandmother, I don't know what he's saying, Grandma. And she says, that's your cousin, or my uncle's bizarre. But that to me, I was like, damn, that's the blues. This is the blues, man. This dude's best life. And remember my grandmother talked about music, and she was like, she just, these Southern people will just say things. She's like, honey, and you got it. They always say, honey, and you got to remember, like with the blues, like white people thought we was sad. And then she's like, we wasn't sad. So I'm like, wow, I'm going to live with that for the rest of my life, Grandma. I mean, there's no conversation after that either. There's no explanation. It's just like, okay, live with that, son, for the rest of your life. And that was very profound statement that I'm in love with that to this day. I mean, I go, wow, I get it. Like, these people are creating this art form and this music in this country because you have to, if you want to survive, man, and you want to come out with your senses, you have to do it. You have to do it. And that's why those kids in the project started rapping. Jay-Z wasn't trying to be a billionaire. He had to do it. And that's why Muddy Waters, Robert Johnson, all of them, they had to do it. Skip James. He had to do it. It's medicine.
I'm curious about, because you were born in Massachusetts, right? But did you grow up in Oakland? Is that right?
Yeah, both. I'm like a mix. I'm a lot like my music. I'm a mixture of everything. I was born in Massachusetts, the whitest place possible. My father was always escaping something. He was coming from New York, in one of the blackest places. And then he moved us to Oakland, the blackest place at the time. And I would spend a lot of my time in the South, in rural Southern Virginia. All those things came to raise me up to be this confusing artist.
Great artist, man. Great artist. I want to ask again about your name, the Fantastic Negrito thing. Could you tell a little bit the story of that, how that came to be?
It's like white Jesus, black problems. It's like, please don't be dead, man. These things just come to me, brother. And I feel like they come from somewhere, the great beyond. I don't have a choice in them. There's some discomfort in them. And I know that, okay, yeah, this is it. I think growing up in California, many Latinos are my neighbors. I'm sleeping at their house. I'm dating their sisters behind their back. I'm doing I'm listening to the music in their family. I'm sleeping over. I'm eating their food. I just grew up with them. And I think I used to hear that name in a lot of banda music, which is the traditional folk music of some places in Mexico. But I hear Negrito, Negrito, and I think I just was like, yeah, Negrito. There it is. I knew a lot of, I speak that California Spanish. So I think when those two words came together, I was like, oh shit. You look around the room and then that must be it.
That's it.
Everybody that's saying something. And I like to do things that are saying something, that aren't contrived, and that are one of a kind, the original, and they've never been said or done before. That's what I like to do.
That's
And
great.
that makes people uncomfortable. And I think that's what art is for me. Doesn't have to be for everybody, but
That's a great answer. That is a great answer, man. Cool. I'm gonna ask you a couple of things because you're coming to the UK. And I'm gonna read these dates out, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. I got the 1st of June. You play in Bristol, and on the 3rd of June you play at the 2nd of June you play at the Red Rooster Festival, the Great Red Rooster Festival, and on the 5th of June you play in Glasgow, which is a great city. That's part of your European tour. Can you tell us about touring? What's your are you a I don't know what's the word, a road warrior? Do you love touring, or is it something that is what do you think? Is it a big part of what you do touring?
you know what? I love everything when it's happening. Like I love being on my farm, which I'm on now, and that's amazing. When I'm touring, that's amazing. I try my best to just be grateful. I sprained my hand yesterday, and that's great too. I can't play the guitar for a minute, and that's great. I don't know. It's all I love it all, and it's all a gift in some weird way. So when I'm touring, I get in love with it, and when I'm done, I'm in love with not touring.
And talk about a process for when you're at a gig, you're at a festival, and you're on stage. How do you decide? I mean, I guess you have would you have a set list that you would stick to through a tour, or does it vary based on what's in front of you? How does it work?
It varies on that stage. You don't want to be playing behind me because you go. I like it to be a very visceral spiritual experience, like kind of like church without the religion. We're just going. We're inspired by something much bigger than us. So I love to keep that energy at a show. My main thing is connecting with that audience because for them it's a concert. For me, it's therapy.
Wow. Church without religion. There's a lyric in there. I like that. I like that a lot. It's a good line.
Church without, brother.
That's really great, man. Well, thank you so much for this interview. Fantastic Negrito. It's been an absolute pleasure, man.
Hey, forward to seeing you out there in the UK.